wants. Call me when you need. Call me in the morning, I'll be on the way. Call me when you want. Call me when you need. Call me out by your name, I'll be on the way. Like
Alright, I'm James,
I'm Chance.
and today we're going to be talking about climate change.
We have a special guest, our first, I think.
Dr. Offtake Soda. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Soda is one of our producers for this episode, and he got a double doctorate in climate science and global economics.
Yeah, I'm excited for this episode. Alright, why don't you explain a little bit about what you do? So I study the change of temperature of the Earth over long periods of time, and how it's getting that way, and how is it affecting humans.
Okay, so atmosphere plays a big role in climate change.
Exactly. The atmosphere consists of 4 layers, right? Yeah, it's sort of 5 though because of the exosphere, but it's basically just outer space. But the 4 are in order from outer space to the Earth is the thermosphere, mesosphere, stratosphere, and troposphere. All of these layers play a big part in human survival and climate change.
Isn't there like a layer inside another layer?
Yeah, the ozone layer is inside the stratosphere. What is the ozone layer? It's a layer of oxygen that keeps the harmful UV rays from getting to us.
I thought it was the greenhouse gases that kept the Earth safe from UV rays.
No, greenhouse gases are the gases that keep heat on Earth by trapping shortwave radiation and sending it back into the atmosphere as longwave radiation, or otherwise known as heat.
So the greenhouse effect is just heat being trapped in the Earth's atmosphere.
So what are the greenhouse gases? Well, the main 3 are water vapor, methane, and carbon dioxide. Well, I'll be calling carbon dioxide CO2 for convenience. But global warming is happening because more greenhouse gases, mostly CO2, are being released into the atmosphere, and more heat gets trapped in the Earth, making it hotter.
A lot of people don't know the difference between, weather and climate.
I actually think I've got this one. Weather is like what's happening today or in the present, and climate is the average temperature and precipitation, or weather in an area. Exactly. It's like it's warm in Mexico. You wouldn't expect it to be cold or snowing because in the past it's been hot.
So climate change is just the change of long-term weather over a long period of time.
Right. So where does global warming come into play? So global warming is just a warming of the Earth over long periods of time.
A lot of people confuse global warming and climate change, but what's the difference, and can we prove either of the two?
So the difference between global warming and climate change is a bit hard. It's a square rectangle problem, as global warming is climate change, but not vice versa. Yeah, and to answer your second question, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that support the theory of global warming and climate change. One major piece is the average temperature of the surface of the sea.
I can see how, the sea temperature would affect the atmosphere's temperature.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? And the US EPA has been doing a lot of research on climate change, and they put together a bunch of data from that sea level surface temperature data. We can see that since 1920, the temperature has been on a general upward trend. That's because in 1920s around the start of the Industrial Revolution, right? That's right. Because of the Industrial Revolution, new machines were built and started pumping lots of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Is there a possibility that while humans are contributing to global warming, natural causes are more at fault?
That's an interesting question, and scientists have actually studied this principle. They found it to be very untrue. I actually heard one of these studies. Some scientists looked into if volcanic eruptions could be a major impact into global warming, but because of the carbon dioxide they released, but this is found to be untrue. I think I know what study you're talking about, and the important thing to realize is that the Earth was meant for greenhouse gases. The Earth actually was a bit of a buffer, and it can absorb pretty hefty amount of greenhouse gases. But in the past century or so, humans have well exceeded this limit.
That study that was mentioned before, the one with the sea surface temperature, that upward incline could be caused by a lot of things, right?
Yeah, but the study had more evidence pointing toward climate change. One other data point was the average temperature going up. 2001 to 2010 had been the warmest decade ever recorded. And if the temperature increases as predicted by 2100, the world will have gone from 4 to 12 degrees average temperature.
While an increase of just 8 degrees doesn't sound that bad, it doesn't really feel like much to us, that's an insane increase. The National Geographic made a prediction, and they said that, quote, "It's going to be inconceivable that civilization could withstand that kind of climactic shock. Traditional social systems would break down." And that quote is just from if the Earth warms 5 degrees on average.
While climate change has a lot of evidence that might make sense at first, there is some that might not. Like how the weather is getting more and more wild. Over the last 20 years, hurricanes have gotten more violent and frequent. Storms cause floods, damage roads and buildings, and even put people's lives on the line.
I've got an idea for a Heinz ketchup commercial. I was at this super posh restaurant. Super posh. The type of place that has chandeliers and paintings on the wall and way too many forks. I think classical music was playing, but maybe it was jazz. No, definitely classical. The hostess walks up to me and she says, "Mr. Sheeran, is this your first time dining with us?" And I say, "Yep." The waiter comes over, he's telling me about the specials. Super fancy vegetables, fancy sauces. I said, "Sounds fancy." So fast forward and the food comes. The waiter goes on to tell me, "We are proud to present this farm-to-table blah blah blah, posh and fancy blah blah blah, with a side of blah blah blah." You know, the food looked good. I just thought there was something missing. So I reach into my bag and I take out the only thing that can complete me. And at that point, the whole world came to a stop. And the waiter was screaming through his eyes. So that's my idea. Do you want to do it?
This is Stereolab.
And right now, we're sitting down with our producer, Dr. Offtake Soda, who's an expert in climate change.
We can now see what's causing some of the increase in temperature, but what are some of the ways that those things came to be, and what causes global warming?
We have told you evidence proving to you that climate change is real, but not what is causing climate change.
Dr. Soda, all you.
Thanks, Chance. Alright, so an organization called Climate Generations has put together lots of graphs which show these causes. For example, they made one called Energy Consumptions in the United States from 1776 to 2014. This graph shows that what fuels the U.S. citizens use. From 1776 to around 1850, people only used wood. But from 1850, both petroleum and coal were introduced, and these were both quickly started to rise.
I mean, that makes a bit of sense. Petroleum is one of the most used fuels today.
That it is. In 2014, petroleum was at around 35 quadrillion British thermal units, or BTU. Keep in mind, wood fuel only ever got to around 2.5 to 3 quadrillion BTU. In another graph, also done by Climate Generation, it shows that petroleum mining is producing 29% of methane emissions.
And as we've said before, methane is a greenhouse gas. So when we petroleum mine, methane is released into the atmosphere and the earth gets warmer.
And because of this mining, more oil and gas is coming into production, which in turn causes more greenhouse gases. Right. Another cause of global warming is that the population on Earth over the last 100 or so years has tripled. Because of this, we need more room for houses, so that means more trees cut down for houses. Because of this, that means there are more cars, and so the amount of smog is produced is much higher. The list goes on. Yeah, and unless we do something about it, it's only going to get worse at an accelerating rate. Something that you could do is drive less. You can ride a bike or walk to a place that you're trying to go.
Also, you should eat healthier. Farm animals produce lots of methane, and eating less of them means less greenhouse gases. And the more meat you eat, the more animals that have to be produced, meaning more cow farts and burps. For reference, 26% of methane is produced by enteric fermentation, which, like Chan said, is just farts and barps of animals. Yeah, one more long-term solution for not using petroleum as fuel is nuclear energy. This form of energy is pretty renewable, and it's very clean. The fear of a meltdown can be eliminated with new forms of reactors, which cannot melt down. Also, the amount of radiation that workers endure is equal to eating a banana. It's crazy. So, these solutions may not be perfect or easy, but we're starting to turn around. In fact, amounts of petroleum have started to decrease since 2014, and using clean energy is the best thing since sliced bread. And with the introduction of new clean clothing products and clean food products and other clean alternatives, we're on the right path.
We don't have a perfect solution yet, but humanity's working on it. Alright guys, it's been fun. I gotta get going. Bye.
So with that, I'm Chance.
I'm James.
And this is Stereolab.
Bye.